At least that's what we're hoping to do here. So, yep, it says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. So, I'm amazed that I was able to pull that off. Okay, we'll give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll let it go.
David Higdon, we can't see you.
Here either.
Yeah, there we do.
George, you are my constant monitor of my posture.
Exactly.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I haven't seen any new faces pop up for a couple of minutes, so I suggest we go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody. We've got a nice turnout. I imagine there'll be some more people popping in as we proceed. My name is Rich Woodward, and I am the president of the College Station Association of Neighborhoods. And we are going to have our annual members meeting, which will have the business meeting. We'll elect the new officers and reports and things like that. But we've done this for 3 years, and each year we've started with a guest speaker. And so last year we had Jeff Capps and Brian Woods actually came in, and sort of they sort of tag teamed as interim and real city manager. This year we thought we'd go back to the city, and we invited Michael Ostrowski to give some comments. Michael received his undergraduate and graduate degrees in Wisconsin, and since graduating in 2008, his career has been really on a pretty rapid ascent. He worked in Wisconsin Rapids, then the city of Stevens Point, and then in 29, he finally made it to Texas. Apparently, he got tired of the Wisconsin winters. And he only spent a year in San Marcos as assistant director, a little over a year in San Marcos as assistant director of planning and development services. And he clearly was seen as something of a star, because within a year, College Station had recruited him away to fill a critical position of director of planning and development services here in College Station. Planning and development services is one of the most important offices in the city, playing a critical role in what happens in our city. He's got a staff of, by my count, it looks like about 40 people, covering planning, engineering, building and development coordination. We are very pleased that Michael agreed to speak with us this evening. After his comments, we'll have 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. If you have any questions for Michael, please pop them into the chat, and we'll share those with Michael once he's done. So Michael, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, Rich, and thanks for the introduction. I feel I should leave on a high note now, but truly, thank you all for allowing me to speak with you today. It is truly an honor, and I'm extremely glad to be here. I love speaking to groups such as these and being able to work with them. I only wish it could be in person. Unfortunately, the situation is what it is, but hopefully in the near future, we can make that a possibility as well. I think it helps build those relationships between the city and the organizations that are out within our community that are so vital in making happen everything that we do here as a city. You know, what I thought I'd do today is talk a little bit about pretty much every position that I've gone to, I've been asked the same question of, what is my vision for the community? What are the major initiatives that I plan to, implement right away? And oftentimes, and pretty much every time, I have the same answer for them. It's not my vision. It's the community's vision, and I'm here as a public servant to help you carry out your vision for the community. I can provide my expertise and guidance and best practices, but ultimately it really is your vision to carry out. I'm just here to help with that process. So today, what I thought I'd do is talk to you maybe a little bit more about some of the concepts or principles that I use and kind of, when looking at doing projects or programs or implementing other actions within the city. So you could get an idea of kind of where I'm coming from and kind of, the philosophies that I've been able to use in some of the previous positions that I held that Rich had mentioned. And then following that, would like to give you just kind of a brief update of some projects that are going on in the city that I hope would be of interest to the neighborhood association. And I'd be happy to answer any questions following that. I'll do my best to answer them. Still relatively new to the community, so I probably won't know everything, but if I don't know any particular answers, I'll be sure to get back to you with those. So I'm going to share my screen. And let me know if you can see that. Okay.
It's still black, but it's coming up. There it is.
Okay, so as I'd mentioned, kind of talking about the concepts and principles that I use. One of the concepts that I often fall back to is really the concept of placemaking. And placemaking is not a new concept. It really is a collaborative process by which we can shape our public places in order to maximize really shared value. And oftentimes placemaking and the principles, you can see the 11 principles outlined on the screen, but oftentimes this is used for developing projects for smaller places like parks or public spaces. However, I think a lot of these principles can transcend to the larger community, as we move forward with projects and initiatives. First, I'm going to just highlight a few of these. I won't go through all of them just in essence of time. But first and foremost, you need to develop a vision for everything that you do, and everything that you do, the programs that you do, the projects that you create, the plans that you make really should be there to further that vision. And the City of College Station does have a vision statement, is outlined within our comprehensive plan as well as the council's strategic plan. But first and foremost, community does need to have a vision, so it really has kind of that guide that it's trying to achieve in moving forward with the services that the city provides. Second, as I had mentioned kind of in my opening comments, the community is the expert. I'm not. I can help guide decisions and work with individuals within the community, but ultimately, the individuals, the organizations, the businesses know what they want within the community. I'm here to help try to implement that and kind of put that in a cohesive package to move forward with some of those aspects. So, meetings such as this and meetings with other stakeholders are absolutely critical in trying to find out, what the desires are for the community and kind of what they want to see. I think all too often, when new planning directors come in, they may try to implement, their vision. And I think that really is the wrong approach because each community is different and has different needs. Third, you're not really creating a place, you're creating a place, not a design. And I think communities often put a lot of value on just design. And really a great design cannot be a substitute for providing access, providing active uses, economic opportunities, and proper programming for the community. You can create the best design, best looking buildings in a community, but ultimately if there's not traffic there, if there's not activity there, that design is not going to help move that along. So providing those areas of economic opportunities as well as programming is extremely critical and typically more critical than just design. One of the other ones is here, start with petunias, and it's kind of a weird thing, but this refers to taking simple short-term actions, such as planting flowers, for example, to test ideas and encourage people to become involved in the process. One of the projects that I did in Stevens Point, and this really wrapped up, into a number of these different principles, but our downtown, we had a historic downtown, we had a lot of infrastructure in our downtown. Some of it was aging. We had, just a really small project that we did that I think made a huge difference. We had these concrete trash bins and we had concrete planter boxes that really were decrepit, and they were peeling paint off of them. And the city could have went and purchased new ones and spent thousands of dollars putting in new benches and new planters and trash cans. However, what we did is instead of doing that, we worked with a local organization called Create Portage County, which was an arts organization within our community. We worked with the university as well as local artists, and we created this program called Trash Canvas that really took kind of it to the next level, where we would get artists or other local community members to come out and paint these trash cans. And we made a contest out of it. And ultimately we got the business owners involved who would put forth, gift cards. Downtown business owners would put forth gift cards as a way to attract people to come and participate in the program for the winning artists. We worked with local paint suppliers to sponsor the program and give the paint for the program. And it really allowed us to work with various organizations within our community. And that kind of gets after that top right box of you can't do it alone. We needed the organizations and support of our local businesses in order to make it happen. But I recognize this project because I think it crossed a lot of these different principles, in that it was a very small project that didn't take huge initiative to move forward. So that starting with petunias kind of reference, and if it didn't work and they didn't turn out well, the city could ultimately go and repaint them, and it wouldn't be a huge loss. The other concept is that money is not always the issue. In this scenario, it cost the city next to nothing to move forward with this project, but it really built a strong reputation for us. It really got the community involved, and it's been a tremendous success. And so we planned on continuing it annually, where we had 14 of these trash cans that we had, where we would keep the winning one each year and then repaint the other 13. So after a certain period of time, you'd have a really kind of artistic vibe within the downtown area that really was just a cool little program that I think had a tremendous impact on the downtown area and bringing forth good relationships with various organizations such as the business community and the citizenry within the city. And finally, with in terms of placemaking, the other box down there on the bottom right, you're never finished. Everything is always changing within a community. The economy is changing, COVID comes, so you always have to be ready to be able to pivot and switch gears as a community to make sure that you're not falling behind in that aspect. And then also, once these plans are implemented, continue to follow up with the actions that you've identified within your plans, because all too often plans are put on a shelf and the actions are never implemented. So that's kind of that other bullet point of you're never finished in making sure that you continuously look for ways to refine and make your community better. So one of the other concepts and another thing that I feel fairly strongly about is financial solvency for communities. I've seen a lot of communities just push for any type of growth, and I'm here to tell you that not all growth is good growth. As growth occurs on the fringes, if it's low density growth, oftentimes that type of growth does not pay for itself due to the services that it requires. The image on your screen is just kind of an illustration. Numbers are different for each community, but you can see that for a typical single family suburban style development, just because of kind of the low density nature of it. It costs about $3,500 per unit to service annually for the services that it needs. Police and fire, library, roads, infrastructure, schools, and that sort of thing. When you contrast that with more of an urban style development, that's the smaller lots, the higher density, that cost of service drops significantly to more than half often within communities. So the more that we can promote density in proper, efficient land use layouts within our communities, the stronger our community becomes financially. There have been a number of studies on this, and there are other proponents of this, but really the theory here is that as communities do these low density developments that often don't pay for themselves from a tax-based perspective, they need to have new development in order to pay for the old development. And they keep continuously doing that. And eventually it catches up with you, because when developments come in, the developers, they develop the subdivision, they put in the roads, they put in the infrastructure, and they turn that over to the city for the most part. And then the city is stuck with that development and those infrastructures in perpetuity. So if you don't have the tax base to generate enough funding to replace those roads when they need to be replaced, or replace those water mains or sewer mains, that becomes a challenge, where then you have other areas of the city that are subsidizing that development in order for that to move forward. So density is a key as you move forward with this. And I'm not saying every parcel in the city needs to be a multifamily, 12 units on each or 100 units on each. It's just keeping that concept in the back of your mind as we're going from a planning perspective, and that density typically pays for itself through this process. The other thing is redevelopment of underperforming areas is also key. And I've been involved with a number of redevelopment projects in my prior community in Stevens Point. We redeveloped a downtown shopping center because it just was not performing well. It was constructed in the 1980s and never really became, fully occupied. And, we turned that into a new campus for our technical college, brought in a huge employer for the area, and added a number of different uses. And what we're able to do is kind of turn that low value, large acre parcel in the middle of our downtown to a much higher performing parcel in our city. And what that does is that allows you to kind of reap those tax-based rewards for a community that you can then use for other programs or developments within the community because of the higher value that you're producing on those properties. And when you do that redevelopment, oftentimes, since that infrastructure is already in place, you're not incurring those costs again that you are with new development. And then finally, with the financial solvency kind of concept here, is that diversity plays a key role in that in all aspects. From land use diversity to your business sectors, and making sure that you're not a one industry town. My first community out of graduate school I worked in was Wisconsin Rapids, and that industry was that town was pretty much founded with the paper mills. And it lived and breathed paper all the time. And it was a major employer. They employed nearly 1,500, 2,000 employees within the Wisconsin Rapids area, and the town was about 18,000 people. So the impact that you can imagine what has happened to the paper industry, the dramatic decline had a profound impact on that community. So we tried to find ways to bring in other industry sectors or other types of developments that would help lessen the need to be so dependent on the paper industry. And, unfortunately, about a year ago, that mill was shut down in Wisconsin Rapids. So, 1,600 people lost their jobs, and in a community of 18,000 people, I mean, do the math, it's, 10,000 or 10% of pretty much your population and all the jobs that go along with it. So it had just a tremendous negative effect on that community and really the surrounding areas. So I've always been a big proponent of being diverse within your industry sector. And I think that also goes from your development side. making sure you have proper single family homes and, duplexes and multifamily and townhomes, because, we've seen the housing crisis before, and likely we will see it again. So just making sure that, we have enough housing stock that is really representative of the population that we have currently, and that the population that we're going to have within the future. So this illustration, this map was taken from the College Station's 2018 existing conditions report. So, some of you may have seen this, but this kind of shows what I've been talking about from a financial and solvency perspective. So this was taken in 2018, and what it shows is the property value per acre of appraised value of properties within the city of College Station. So when I talk about density and high performing properties from a financial standpoint, you can see where most of that financial high performing properties are. And Northgate plays a huge role in this, and allows the city to be able to get tax base to provide the other services and programs to the rest of the community that you can see that maybe not as high performing. Now, while this is often key to a number of things, it isn't the only thing, right? So, if we only looked at financial solvency, we'd never create any parks, because parks don't produce tax base, so they don't produce revenue. But I think we all know the value that parks brings to our community and people wanting to be there. When I was in Stevens Point, we had a tremendous park system, a tremendous trail system, and was one of the top reasons why people wanted to move to our community. So, I mentioned a lot of these concepts and these principles, but again, it's a combination of all of them that I think is important that we take a look at as we review projects and propose plans or other initiatives as a community in order to make sure that we're growing the way that we need to achieve our vision, and that we're not falling behind. So these are some of the concepts that, like I said, I feel are important that I've used in the past, and there are many others, but I just wanted to highlight some of them to give you an understanding of kind of, as I review projects, as we look at projects in the planning and development department, and some of the things that we're looking at, because we're trying to look at all aspects of a project to make an informed decision, because our community and who we represent, there are various stakeholders within our community that we represent as well. So that is it for really kind of just the concepts and the principles that I'd use. Next, I thought I'd talk a little bit about just some of the projects, initiatives, approvals that have recently been made or are in process, just to give you kind of an update of where we're at from a planning and development perspective. As probably all of you know, RU was passed and approved by council on the 19th of April. And what RU does is allows a neighborhood or subdivision to petition the city to put a restriction on occupancy within that particular subdivision. Some of the elements that were involved with the RU ordinance requires that petition to be 50% plus one of the lots within that subdivision. There were some other components of that ordinance that does allow for the expansion of, if a RU is put in place, does allow for the expansion of those uses. And it also allows for structural renovations. And I think that's a good thing in that that allows, those properties to continue to be rehabbed and make sure that they're in a good structural integrity and aesthetically pleasing state. Whereas if you didn't allow those alterations, I think you could have some unintended consequences in that aspect. So also with the RU, there were a number of legacy provisions within there that if for example the structure is demolished, they would lose their grandfathering. If the owner created additional lots or a building plot, they would lose their grandfathering. If the use changed or the occupancy increased above 4, they would lose their grandfathering. Now, one of the things that they did, the council did move forward with, is that they do allow the uses to fluctuate between 2 unrelated up to 4, and it can go back and forth. so long as you keep your rental registration, and that is not terminated. So, what they wanted to do and what they didn't want to have, I think, happen is, they didn't want that, if for one aspect, a property owner is allowed to rent to 4, if they didn't allow the fluctuation of going back and forth, up and down in terms of the occupancy numbers, would there be the intention of that property owner ever wanting to rent to a family again, because they would lose that ability to move back up to 4. So with the approval of RU, they do allow for that, like I said, that fluctuation back and forth between the 2 and 4 unrelated, if they had the city's rental registration in effect. So in addition to RU, there was also the call as a future agenda item on council for a workshop for planning and development staff to look at some other neighborhood integrity items and bring those items back to the council for further conversation. Our department is currently working on those and hope to have a workshop. I think it is scheduled right now, looking to be towards the second meeting in May of some other potential ideas that we can look at to address some of the other concerns that we've heard. I think with occupancy issues and some of the other concerns with parking and parking on the grass and loud parties and other complaints, there really is no single silver bullet to addressing all of these in one fell swoop. So it's being, again, being able to refine and being nimble and being able to address some of the concerns that you see coming up. And that's what we hope to present, at least some other items for the council to consider as we move forward with some potential other items that we could look at from that perspective. Another project we're working on is the comprehensive plan update. You may have heard of this going through the process, but really our comprehensive plan is pretty much our guide for everything. It's our long range vision for our community that we see moving forward. Underneath that, we have various master plans, from transportation thoroughfare plans to park and rec plans and other district and neighborhood plans underneath that. So I often tell people who want to get involved in the process to get involved early in being involved in setting that vision and setting, one of the big components of the comprehensive plan is future land use maps. And that is essentially the map that we use to determine what land use, not what zoning district, but what land use should be in particular areas in the future. So when rezoning requests come forward, we look to that future land use and make sure that it's consistent with our comprehensive plan. And I think oftentimes, people get frustrated in that process, and that, you have situations where a property maybe is low density, single family zoned or rural zoned property. And, a new property owner or the current property owner comes in and wants to rezone it to a multifamily type use or a commercial type use. And staff is recommending approval as we go through our process, because we're looking back at our comprehensive plan, and that comprehensive plan may say, yeah, this property is appropriate for multifamily or commercial, and we're carrying out that overall vision of the comprehensive plan. But that's why I tell people to try to get involved early, especially in the comprehensive plan when we're doing the creation of the comp plan or the update in the comp plan, because that's the document that really pretty much guides everything else that we do, from other plans and budgets that we set or codes and ordinances that we adopt. So that is a critical component. I'm just going to show a quick timeline that we have here. So here's our planning horizon. Our current comp plan was adopted in 2009. We've just started our existing or just finished up with our existing conditions and 10-year evaluation, and now we're in that plan update phase. So taking kind of what we've heard, some of the changes that they wanted to see. Our long range team is working with various departments within the city to take that information and kind of package that and get it in form to move forward through the public input process, to make sure that what we heard throughout the process is kind of representative of what the amendment will be for that plan. So Alyssa and her team is working very hard in moving that forward. We plan on doing a lot of public engagement here over the summer, as well as the later part of the summer when the students are back, because we want to get the input of all citizens and visitors to our community. So we'll be moving forward with that update and that public input session, like I said, throughout the summer here, and then hopefully adoption later this fall. So please stay tuned. We'll be sending out email reminders and media blasts through our local media partners in city. But that is a very important component to planning and development, because it really sets the stage for everything else that we do. So some of the big picture recommendations that we heard through the evaluation and through the existing conditions, I'll just go through a few of them here. Letter B, refining the vision and statement and goals. We'll be looking at kind of the goals to make sure that they're still representative of what we want to see as a community, and then also refining that concept map and the future land use map. In the past 10 years, we've had a number of changes. Do some of those land uses maybe need to be switched? Do some of the land uses maybe need to be more natural based, because we found out that these areas are high prone flooding areas, or we put in a new thoroughfare that maybe has changed the intent of that area, where maybe it was residential and now it's more suitable for commercial. So we'll be looking at refining both the concept map, and the concept map is kind of the more conceptual thing of talking about, these are the areas that we want to see more stable type developments, and then these are our areas for growth moving forward within the future. And then the future land use map is a little bit more specific in kind of identifying those other specific types of land uses that we want to see. Some of the other things that we'll be looking at is also prioritizing additional detailed planning areas. So I'm sure a number of you are familiar with some of our neighborhood plans that we've done. We also want to look at other special areas, smaller areas for planning for maybe redevelopment areas, such as one area here is the area along University and Texas, where the new city hall is, to see, how does that area redevelop in the future? What does post Oak Mall look like in the next 10, 20 years? So we'll be looking at prioritizing, different areas throughout the community that will warrant kind of a more detailed look and view in planning initiative over the next, 10-year planning horizon. We'll also be taking a look at our thoroughfare plan, making sure that, we've got the proper transportation networks and modes in place, but not just for automobile traffic, but for also alternative modes of transportation, bike and ped and many other things that go along with that as we start to continue to emerge as a very fast growing city. Congestion is always on the minds. I come from recently from San Marcos and New Braunfels, and congestion was just absolutely horrendous, especially along the I-35 corridor. So again, just making sure that we properly plan and understand kind of what's coming down in the future. And then just some various cleanup stuff, be looking at annexation priorities. One of the big things that we've seen, in the last 10 years is the really change in annexation laws, where cities are no longer able to do kind of forced annexation. So, we can't go in and say, we're going to just annex this area and bring it into the city pretty much anymore. We've got to have a voluntary petition by the property owners in order to come into the city. So, that may, that really changes kind of, our thoughts probably on growth and moving forward in the city, because it becomes a little bit more challenging to add land to your city unless, that development is requesting to come in. So these are just some of the big picture recommendations that we'll be moving forward with from a comp plan perspective. And then just some really quick highlighted projects.
If you can sort of bring it to a close, Michael, we got.
Sure. Just two quick things that wanted to touch base on. These aren't projects that we're moving forward with right now, but we are applying for a tech stack grant to look at some potential, shared use path along Harvey Mitchell Parkway that would connect Jones Crossing back to the College Station Library. And then one that I thought was important to talk about as well is the George Bush Drive, as that is being reconstructed. we have made an application for a grant to provide some protected bike lanes along that corridor. So right now they're separated. We wanted to add a vertical element, like a small wheel stop that would make them protected to provide some additional protection along that corridor. So those are just some of the things that we've got going on within our department. Obviously, we've got some major other developments going on from the development standpoint, but I just wanted to touch base on some of those. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you or the group has regarding those or any other thing that planning and development is involved with.
All right. Thanks very much. That was fascinating. My temptation is to jump in with all of my questions, but I'll instead read the questions that have come in. So Suzanne Drleski wrote, I appreciate the concept of place, not design, but it feels like College Station has sometimes jumped onto new ideas like retail on the first floor at apartment complex or like Wolfpen Creek and North Point Crossing, and it just doesn't work. How do you plan to balance the forward thinking of those who want to bring these types of development concepts to our community with those who reside here and have different vision for our communities? And I guess the reality versus the planner's sort of vision and theory.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. Oftentimes it gets back to market and whether or not there really is a market for, you talk about the mixed use concepts of, whether it's retail or office on first floor, residential above. And, it's not, I think, applicable for every area within the community. It may be, more appropriate for certain sections of the community where you have that marketability where that concept does work. Northgate, for example, that concept works relatively well in Northgate, but it's probably not going to work in some of the other more suburban style areas where you just don't have the pedestrian foot traffic in order to generate those types of users. So I think, as we look at from planning initiatives, we're looking long-term vision, but recognizing that some of the short-term elements are also important in order to get there. So getting back to that start with Petunia, starting with the smaller concepts and making sure and testing those that they work for this community and making sure that the areas that they're being proposed for, are able to support those types of developments.
Sort of building on that, what about the Post Oak Mall? Is that an underperforming development? What that seems like that's got to be sort of front and center on a lot of your planning thinking.
Yeah, I mean that I won't comment too much on whether I feel it's an underdeveloping performing development because I haven't been here that long, but I will say that we would like to move forward with just what redevelopment options that site could have potentially in the future, because it's a massive area. And looking back and looking at the historical perspective of malls just in general, that concept is really changing. In Stevens Point, where I was, they developed the mall in the mid 80s and it never really got full. And we ended up acquiring the mall as the city and tearing a good chunk of it down and repurposing that mall. So I think what we're seeing nationally with malls, that it's just very difficult for them to continue to operate and be profitable. And some can do very, very well. But I think one of the bigger components is just developing kind of that consumer base surrounding that. So that's where it gets back to kind of those mixing of uses and making sure that you have a customer base that's able to support that, and there's enough draw within the community or within the region in order to support those.
So let me just ask one more question and then we'll sort of wrap it up. Thinking about the comprehensive plan, what do we need to do to include neighborhood stability in the execution of the comprehensive plan? And sort of, one of the things that we've noticed a lot is, particularly in the last couple of years, but obviously the comprehensive plan is sort of in the later phases. We look at the comprehensive plan and things are being approved that are not on the comprehensive plan, that it's not serving that guiding role anymore. So I guess, how do you maintain neighborhood stability within that comprehensive plan process and as it's implemented and used?
Yeah, and I think it really depends on kind of, what we're talking about in terms of neighborhood stability. I will tell you, we have also the council strategic plan that, one of those strategic actions is neighborhood integrity. So, the actions that council moves forward with, we often relate those back. But, in terms of, looking at some of those integrities of neighborhoods, I think some of the areas that are key is, making sure, like I said, proper land uses are in place for the future. One of the things that we have to do is we also have to address kind of the supply and demand equation too. So, where is this future growth going to go? And, with university communities, oftentimes, university and students, they want to be close to campus, and that's completely understandable. So, we have to make sure that we're properly planning for particular land uses and kind of where those growth areas are intended to go. So, getting those neighborhood integrity items or neighborhood stability items, I think starts first and foremost, just really making sure that, we're properly identifying the areas within the community of where future land uses should go. And then really also kind of identifying the specific actions that need to be carried out. So, within, the comp plan, we've got the goals and then we've got the objectives that we want to achieve. And then ultimately, these are the specific actions as a community that we want to move forward with. But ultimately, like I said, I think the future land use equation, as well as kind of the density issue, is critical as we look to the comprehensive plan in identifying, where the growth areas are going to occur and kind of how those areas interact with the neighborhoods and how they transition, with the neighborhoods. And that's where the other elements of those smaller neighborhood plans, I think, come into play, where, we're able to focus and get more down to the granular level of those particular neighborhoods and kind of what's important to do. So, as we do the neighborhood planning aspects and identify which neighborhoods that we want to continue to move forward with those plans, that's a really good time for, individuals to get involved in that process.
Well, thank you very much. I guess we can, if you close your PowerPoint, maybe people can raise their hands and do a little applause.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So we're going to move to the business part of the meeting. Michael, you are absolutely welcome to stick around if you want to listen in. But at the same time, you certainly do not feel obligated.
Sure. Thank you very much.
So I will now load up my PowerPoint, and we will hopefully everything will move seamlessly. All right, are you seeing my slide? Okay, so I'm going to call to order the third annual members meeting of the College Station Association of Neighborhoods. I'm going to ask, so Shirley DePriest and Rachel Smith will give reports from the secretary and the treasurer. Shirley?
Okay, I have emailed the minutes. Rich has sent them out via MailChimp. They're basically the minutes from our previous meeting on 4/29 of 2020, where the speakers were Brian Woods and Jeff Katz. There was some discussion by both of them about the status of the city and COVID at that time. We've nominated the new board members. Of the CSAN organization voted on and elected both of those. There was a quick review of president of what happened in the previous year, 2019, and projected plan for CSAN for 2020. Of course, COVID made a lot of changes to that projection. We've adjusted as much as possible. We're looking forward to getting back to meeting each other in person. That closed the minutes for our previous year's meeting. And if I hear a motion to accept the minutes.
So let's do the motion to accept the secretary and the treasurer's report simultaneously.
Okay.
And then in the ballot that I emailed out, there is a way for everybody to quickly just do a quick click on that, or maybe we'll just anyway. All right, Rachel Smith, if you could give the treasurer's report.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. With some generous gifts, we were able to raise $10,344 last year, with our yearly expenditures totaling $8,034.72. As of our last checking statement balance, our amount was $2,304.69.
Is that it?
That's it. I'm done. I'm telling you, I'm short and sweet.
All right. Maybe Rachel, I imagine people would sort of like to know what we spent our money on. Can you just sort of quickly say what we spent money on?
Well, yeah. Hold on, just 1 second. I knew you were going to do this.
You don't need to give us exact numbers, just sort of roughly. What are the type of things we're spending money on?
Okay, so we're spending money. Most of our money goes towards elections. I'd say a good 90%, 92%. Last year was odd, so we did have a lot of money for, or not a lot, but we had money for things like Zoom. As we changed the world, we had to change how we met with the world. Elections probably totaled $7,000 to $8,000 close.
That's the answer.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I guess it's probably appropriate for there to be a motion to approve and a second. Is there a motion? Maybe somebody who's not on the board. Come on, just raise your hand. You don't even to say that. There we go. All right, thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second. All right, we're good to go. Okay, great. And as I said, the voting will be done electronically. If you have any trouble with that, just send us an email message. Okay. So at our annual meeting, we elect new members to the board. I'm gonna just quickly introduce the two new members of the board and talk about how excited we are to have them join the board. And then Linda Bendixson will say some comments about the two members who are rotating off. So, and I think this is really an important thing that is happening at this meeting, is that we have asked Charles Vesperman. Charles, you want to wave your hand in case anybody's okay? And Kyle Bryan, maybe you can quickly turn your screen on, Kyle, if you're still there. Okay, there we go. All right. So we've asked Charles and Kyle to join the board. And what's really exciting about this is that these are people that they're new, right? They're new to CSAN. Charles was somebody who was very active in some of the Zoom meetings, asking really good questions to candidates, really good questions about the RU. Kyle was instrumental in getting some protections for his neighborhood in Dove Crossing. These are the type of people that we have to bring in. We've got to grow the organization in a way that is sustainable. So we're really excited to have Kyle and Charles join us on the board. and we think it's it's a path forward. So we've been very deliberate in setting up a rotation. People are elected for 3 years, and then they can re-up their term for another 3 years, but then they rotate out. And so we're going to have this rotation, and hopefully 12 years from now, when all of the founding members are gone, the organization will still be strong and sustainable. Linda, do you want to say, so I'm talking about the benefits of that. Linda Bendixson gets to talk about the costs of that, in that we lose people from the board.
Hey, everyone. It's really good to see you, even if it's just in our little Hollywood Squares format here. I don't know if we can say an adequate thank you to these people, to David Higdon and Nan Kraus. But on behalf of the board, I'm saying thank you, but there's just so much that they do. Both of them have given just freely of their talents and obviously countless hours of time. David, particularly, thank you for working us through a lot of the ins and outs of short-term rentals. I sure have learned a lot in a short time, still somewhat confused, but he does a great job of researching and then reporting to us. Also helping us develop an understanding of and good relationship with homeowners associations, and that's been really great and valuable. I would say for me personally, the thing I appreciate most about you, David, is your sense of humor. Even when you got knocked on your, in Snowpocalypse, you made jokes. I mean, he's a man who is hardworking and has a great sense of humor, and that's unbeatable. Nan does a little bit of everything. She knocks on doors, she talks face to face, she calls people, she writes letters. Rich and I were joking earlier, is there anything she doesn't do? She's kind of become our unofficial editor-in-chief. She has a really keen eye for proper grammar, and even more importantly, sometimes word choice or diction. She's just really good at that and helps us out with that. Just on a personal note, the word I would use for Nan is passionate. I've known her since I taught her son back in AMP CMS when he was a student there, one of her sons. And she brings passion to everything she does. If she's going to take an interest in it, it's not going to be halfway. It's going to be done passionately. And so for both of them, we just appreciate the hard work, the humor, and the passion that you have brought to our board. And I know you guys are going to keep doing the good things that you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nan and David. You'll be missed at our meetings, but you won't be missing my email messages. I'll be asking you to do lots of stuff as soon as you step off the board. So, the next item on our agenda, Emily Jane's back. Okay, good. Okay. We have a Shirley DePriest suggested that we should have an idea of something called a neighborhood hero. And Shirley volunteered to not only do the neighborhood hero this year, but do it next year as well. And also sort of make sure that acknowledgement happens. So Shirley, take it away. Just let me know when you want to advance.
Okay.
Shirley, you need to speak directly into the microphone because you're somehow you like fade in and out. So try to like focus on the microphone.
I don't even know where the microphone is on this laptop,
Okay.
But
just stream.
Okay. I would be surprised if all of you have not met Emily Jane Cowan. She is our neighborhood hero for this year and will be an example for anyone who wants to organize, support, and celebrate their neighborhood. If you can you progress this, or do I need to?
Yep, no, I can do it. You just advance.
The Cowan family moved into the South Side neighborhood about the same time I did, and she is everything that our new planning and development director explained in the very beginning of his presentation. She just plants petunias. She knows that the job is never finished. She has believed that you are creating a place, not a design. She is the epitome of a neighborhood advocate. And of course, she couldn't do all that she has done without the support of her husband, Chris. And she's involved her children in all of this. And if you'll proceed to the next slide, you can see how she did it. And that was walking the neighborhood, meeting and talking to people face to face. She, of course, had the advantage of having her stroller and her children to start a conversation, but the fact that she introduced herself to everyone that she met, she knocked on doors and introduced herself and just brought our community together pretty single-handedly. If you'll go to the next slide. She was instrumental in advocating for the neighborhood by getting neighbors together to form Save Our South Side, which was a particular issue originally in the neighborhood, but she turned that into an opportunity to organize the entire neighborhood, not just for the one issue that we were facing, but to support and celebrate the South Side neighborhood. And she organized the Southside Neighborhood Advocacy Group and made our local guineas the official mascot. Next sign, please. The first real large organization was meeting in Bryson Park, and Emily Jane actually went to everyone in the neighborhood and handed out invitations. And as you can see by the few photos I have here, it was a huge success. And although the event that triggered this particular Save Our South Side was not successful, we celebrated anyway. And that was a huge step to celebrate, even though it was considered a loss. She showed us the optimism of looking ahead and staying organized. Next slide, please. She is prolific in many ways. She put together the Guinea Gazette, which included advertising for rental property or houses for sale, for historic markers in the neighborhood, for the student activities. She certainly is closer in age to the students than some of the folks in our neighborhood. So she made instant friends with students near and far in the entire neighborhood, and published, I believe, 7 of the Guinea Gazettes currently. Next slide, please. When one of our neighbors who rides one of these tricycles got it stolen out of her garage, Snag and Emily Jane were instrumental in rallying the troops and getting donations so that the tricycle could be replaced. That would be for Miss Roberta Inglis, who lives on Old Jersey. And if you're in the neighborhood, pretty much most mornings you might see her in the area. But that was a neighborhood event that was exceptionally heartwarming and successful. Next slide, please. The way she did it was just neighbors meeting neighbors for whatever events arose. She included the kids in the neighborhood, certainly not just the ones that were her children's age, but any of the kids, when historic markers were approved and people joined at the City Hall for the presentation, she made sure that the rest of the neighbors knew and could attend. And it was a lot of just face-to-face talking to people. Next slide, please. She has encouraged a lot of the neighbors to install turquoise tables out in their yards so that there's some meeting locations for not just the neighbors, but for the students or for visitors or families of students when they're in town to feel invited to the neighborhood and to sit down and have a conversation or a cup of coffee or just take a rest if you're out walking with the dog. Just an opportunity to participate. Next slide. When the neighborhood conservation overlay was being organized in the neighborhood, her concern was that there might be a little division in the neighborhood. So she offered the support of SNAG, but not the participation, so that her view was a social, positive, optimistic vision for her community. She did help make arrangements for meetings and provide snacks and supporters, but she was the social aspect of that overlay. Next slide. Her home was awarded the historic marker number 100 at 603 Guernsey, and this is her celebration of the home that she's currently living in. She and her husband will be moving in May to San Angelo, but will be keeping their home in hopes that at some point they will return to the area and make this their lifetime home. But we celebrated the marker with the neighbors and our current city council. Next slide. I know that everyone can't accomplish all that Emily Jane has accomplished. But if we had an Emily Jane in every subdivision, we would be the greatest city anywhere. Thank you, Emily Jane, for being our hero, and you will be missed. And I believe she would like to say a few words, if you would put her on the screen, please. Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing. All right. Emily Jane, can you unmute, or do I have to ask you to unmute?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, thank you, Shirley. Those were some really nice things that you said. I don't know if I don't know. That was like the dream, Emily Jane. I'm not so sure that I'm really that great, but thank you. I mean, I'm super honored when Shirley told me about this. This really touched me that y'all thought that much of me as an organization, and really humbled by this. So thank you. I mean, I hope the mission of it to inspire others. I mean, that's always been what I've wanted to do with my life. I spent so many years teaching, and I didn't really care so much about the content of what I was teaching, but it was just to inspire these kids' lives. So I hope that it'll help, get a neighborhood hero in every neighborhood in College Station. But of course, CSAN knows that this work is really, really tiring, and it can overwhelm you. You will feel burned out multiple times in a day by all the work that there is to do. So I think, before I had 2 children, and before life just completely overwhelmed me, I learned a little trick, and it still works. It's just to open my front door and to step away from the computer and open my front door, and really kind of what Shirley said, I literally just walked out my front door and started pushing my stroller, and that is how it happened. But when I got into the weeds of things, when SNAG really got started, and I was researching and calling and having meetings with council members, going to city council meetings, and just getting really tired, I had to remember to just walk outside my front door and go be the hands and feet of a neighbor living in the heart of College Station, in the heart of South Side. And there's some real magic that happens with an impromptu gathering. Walking down Fairview Street and seeing, oh, Fred and Shirley are on their back porch, and sitting down for a cup of coffee, and then continuing on my walk and seeing, another neighbor walking a dog, and then, oh, by the way, oh, this house is for sale. And then you turn the corner and you're like, hey, did you know that house is for sale? Oh yeah, I'm going to tell my friend. I mean, it just really, like, this impromptu sort of natural thing can happen, but you have to walk outside in order for that to occur. It doesn't occur in an organized meeting, and it doesn't occur in the same way behind a computer screen. I know we're having to attempt to make that magic happen via Zoom, but anyway, it just reminded me of why I was working so hard, and those were my best days. And all my 8 years of living here were the days that I just walked outside, and just this lovely day unfolded, and it was sort of creating the heaven that I wanted to live in. Because we all know that sometimes city council meetings can be hell. And I just had to remember what I was working so hard for. So that's my lesson, or, my advice, my hope, is just to walk outside the front door and be ready to walk with your feet and give a hug, shake a hand, do the work with your hands. And that's how the seeds are planted, and some wonderful things can happen. So thank you, CSAN. I am so grateful for all the hard work that y'all are doing. I really, really do support it with my whole heart. I just can't do all that feet walking and handwork that I used to be able to do. So anyway, thank you for the honor. I appreciate it. I got a lovely gift here. This beautiful wine stopper, College Station, St. Angelo. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily Jane.
Thanks, Emily Jane. Okay. So that's, if that's not a tough act to follow, I don't know what is, but we'll go back to boring president's report. And I just want to sort of give a summary of where we are, who we are, and where we're going. As all of you probably know, CSAN hasn't been around that long. We were formed in 2017 out of a desire to support candidates for city council who are sympathetic to neighborhood concerns. There was a time when we felt like we did not have representation on city council, and that has changed. Or that we didn't have a majority representation. We always had people on city council who were supportive, but we did not have a majority. We now have that. We were formalized as a member organization in 2019. And I gotta say, 2021, since our annual meeting last year, was a real breakout year for us in terms of CSAN's vote, sort of voice for neighborhoods really making a difference. I think I presented these next two slides last year, and I still think they're worth saying again. These are from the bylaws. The purpose of the College Station Association of Neighborhoods is to support the residents of College Station who seek to protect and enhance the quality of their lives, their neighborhoods, and their lives. We believe, we have a longer list, but here are the three that I cherry picked. Healthy, vibrant neighborhoods are the backbone to a strong city. Public policy should preserve and improve on this great asset. And livable neighborhoods encourage businesses to locate here, creating a diverse and sustainable community. So this is not a zero-sum game. This is not neighborhoods or business. It's neighborhoods because economic growth depends upon strong neighborhoods. What do we do as an organization? So, we've done a bunch of things, and our main focus for the first 2 years in particular were support nonpartisan candidates who will protect neighborhood and family interests. I put nonpartisan in red because I think that's really critical to who we are and way we operate in this incredibly divisive political world that we live in. It is an absolute pleasure to work with people from the other side of the aisle who don't see they don't see eye to eye with me on a lot of issues when it comes to what's going on in Washington and DC, or Washington and Austin. But we can agree on everything when it comes to things that are happening here in College Station. In particular, we've endorsed candidates in every election since 2017. In 2020, we endorsed Bob Brick, Linda Harvell, and Joe Guerra, and we got 2 of the 3. We were really close with Joe. He came 36 votes, as I recall, from winning a majority in the special election in January, but then did not get over the hump when they had the runoff. So what else do we do? We encourage neighborhood participation in local political processes and provide input to city planning. So CSAN, every January after the elections, they appoint new committees. We're knocking on lots of doors, or in this case, virtual doors this year, asking people to step up and serve on citizen committees, because that's really important. There's no question that the current city council is making neighborhood integrity a high priority in every decision. So, we've made progress both at the level of the committees, from planning and zoning to parks to the very top. What else do we do? We conduct research-based advocacy for policies that improve the quality of life in the city. We've seen that happen on 2 big issues since the last annual meeting. The short-term rental ordinance was passed in June. There was a ton of research and getting together and working with, in fact, on March 11th, the day before the pandemic, or I don't know, is the day before or the day of, sort of the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic. We had a meeting with, I think there were probably 50, 75, maybe 100 people in the room down at Pebble Creek, where we had homeowners associations and lawyers that came up from Houston to advise us. We put in a lot of work to do the homework to figure out how you can write a short-term rental ordinance. The final ordinance that was passed does some pretty basic things. It requires short-term rentals to get registered. It requires them to pay a hotel occupancy tax. It requires them to have health and safety inspections. That was approved unanimously by City Council in June of 2020. right? And then, of course, the most significant recent accomplishment is the passing of the restricted occupancy overlay that empowers neighborhoods to restrict occupancy to not more than 2 unrelated individuals. And that's going to provide a path for neighborhoods to secure the single family nature of their neighborhood. Huge victory, but an amazing amount of work went into that. Hat tip to Fred Dupriest, who became, he's not even on the board anymore, but he was the nation's leading scholar on 2 unrelated ordinances, I'm pretty sure. He put in a lot of effort, made countless presentations to people on this issue, and did the homework to know that what we were doing was right and had strong legal precedent and had plenty of support. So in the process of the RU, I think it's worth pointing out that CSAN also supported the revised definition of related that we discovered in that process that was on the city's book, and it was a real mess. And that got fixed, halfway through that process. They actually had to pause the RU process to say, oh, we got a bigger problem here. They fixed that, and that happened. So some big accomplishments in terms of policies, and there's other things as well. What will we do? Sort of looking forward. Well, I don't know what we'll do, next week. There may be another global pandemic, but the things that I know CSAN is going to be working on, we're certainly going to be working to assist neighborhoods that seek to adopt the RU so that every new neighborhood does not have to learn from scratch. It's a complicated process. We've got to have some place where there's a repository for the institutional knowledge to help keep that good process going and make it not such a burden on every neighborhood that wants to do it. The bottom line is, if your neighborhood wants to pursue the RU, please contact us. Let us work with you. Let us learn alongside you so that we can then help the next neighborhood. And if you'd like to be part of a team that provides that kind of support, work with us too. Maybe you're not sure if you want to do this, but if you'd be willing to help out on somebody else's RU, then we can make that do it. Now, we will not be members of the committees, right? It's going to have to be neighborhood driven. This comes from the bottom up, but we'd be outside advisors on that. Another thing that I know we'll continue to do is we'll continue to support common sense neighborhoods that have concerns about they're being threatened by zoning changes or other city policies. We did that, twice in this year, and we weren't instrumental in this, but we made phone calls on people's behalf. So the Dove Crossing I mentioned earlier, they had a major concern. We made sure that the city council's members that we have worked with in the past were aware of that and reached out to them. There was an issue in Wellborn, same type of thing. We tried to make sure that our city council members understood that we felt like this was a really legitimate consideration, and that in both cases that was successful. So in conclusion, CSAN is clearly a strong and effective voice for neighborhoods. When we were founded in 2017 and 2018, we started making presentations to city council and just in here visitors. And every time we would set up, my name is Rich Woodward, I'm associated with the College Station Association of Neighborhoods, because nobody knew who we were. All right. It's my impression that everybody on city council now knows who CSAN is. Right. So we have been very effective in getting known. People are coming to us now and seeing, if they have neighborhood concerns, we can be an effective voice for those concerns. And we've been successful. College Station City Council is full of members who are truly committed to protecting neighborhood integrity. Just a call to action at the end here. We've made progress, but this just came up in the meeting of the room. It's like anything that's passed by a city council today can be rolled back in a year, right? Those rules are not locked in stone by any means. So there's 2 seats up for election in November, and there's 3 seats up in November 2022. So stay tuned. There'll be more work to do. So with that, I am done with my comments. Shirley, did anybody chat in any questions?
Not a question, but we wanted to make sure that planning and zoning members were equally responsible for moving STRs through a lot of these other.
Absolutely. Yeah, my oversight. Yeah, absolutely. The folks on the planning and zoning committee that were really important in making those things happen. Thank you.
I didn't see any other questions that I suppose that people are probably ready to get to dinner. So I move that we adjourn our 3rd annual meeting of the CSAN members. Is there?
Second.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Again, I know that at least there's been one member who said, I didn't get a ballot. So if you didn't get a ballot in your email message, send me, you know how to find me, info@csantx.org, and we'll get you a ballot. But just as a formality, we'd like to have those done. So have a good evening.